a new documentary by Henry Louis Gates Jr. titled The Black Church will air on PBS. And just this evening, I came across talk on the internet about the documentary devoting a segment to First African Baptist Church in Savannah, Georgia, and possibly even endorsing the claim of Arabic appearing on the pews. So that intrigued me, and so I went looking through the available trailers and teasers, which are online, and I found a clip on Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s YouTube page, and I'll share a link to the video in the video description. But I'd like to show a relevant portion of that teaser or of that clip here. Here, take a look at this.
This building has so many symbols in it that are codes for various things in the windows, in the ceiling, on the side of the pews.
After long days of labor, the free and enslaved members of First African Baptist worked through the night to create a home in which to worship their God. The people who built these pews paid homage to Christ, but also left a surprising trace of another African religious past, Islam.
Okay, I must admit, that is, for me, that's intriguing. Did you see the specific pew that the clip ended on? I'd like to look at that portion at the end one more time and focus in on the relevant pew.
The people who built these pews paid homage to Christ, but also left a surprising trace of another African religious past, Islam.
So what intrigued me about that is that as Gates alludes to traces of Islam being left on the pews, the clip stops on the exact pew that I had proposed an Arabic reading for about 16 months ago. To make this more clear, I'd like to rotate the image 90 degrees to the left and then zoom in on the markings. In my hypothetical case for Arabic on a pew, I had proposed that one could argue the markings resemble the Arabic phrase Ilahin Nas, which means the God of mankind, and happens to be a line from the last chapter of the Quran. Ilahin Nas. Now, I haven't seen the documentary yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing it next Monday. For now, I'll say that as the clip not only calls those markings Arabic, but more specifically Islamic, I suspect that they might argue that specifically Quranic text appears on that pew. By the way, we now know how Gates came to the conclusion that Arabic appears on that particular pew. Was he simply deferring to people in the church who take the position that Arabic appears on the pews? No. Was he influenced by previous arguments? No. It turns out that he flew in a scholar from Harvard, a yet-to-be-named scholar from Harvard, who took a fresh look at the pew and, independently of anyone else, also concluded that Arabic appears on that pew. I'm looking forward to seeing if he mentions who that scholar is in the documentary or in the forthcoming book that he's going to release next week in conjunction with the documentary. But here's a relevant clip which discusses precisely that point.
In 1773 in Savannah, Georgia, the first African Baptist church was formed. And I went there and I filmed. And, there is in the balcony on a pew, inscribed, carved into the wood, an odd language, right? And nobody knew what it said. So we flew down a linguist from Harvard to translate it. And he looked at it, and it's Arabic.
Wow.
It's Arabic, man. It was like, that's just to underscore the high degree of Muslims who were part of the enslaved population. So 3 years before the American Revolution.
See, the church's website began to publicly state that Arabic appeared on the pews nearly 3 years ago. However, to my knowledge, the church never made a public case in favor of that position. They simply asserted it. And in the absence of a public argument in favor of their position, certain persons openly called for, some people were openly calling that claim false and were even accusing proponents of that view of being part of some sort of nefarious agenda.
Right? But now the agenda is trying to classify this as Arabic. This is not Arabic. I'm saying that to you so that way you guys can understand. They're trying to erase history right now.
Then, about 16 months ago, as part of a discussion on a proper methodology for presenting a case for language on the pews, I offered a hypothetical, emphasis on hypothetical, a hypothetical case for Arabic on a pew, merely as a thought experiment. And, in the months since then, I've refined the argument a bit more in subsequent videos. I'm not quite sure what is going to be said in Gates' documentary, but it should be noted that endorsing the appearance of Arabic on the pews does not necessitate that one therefore deny that any other language on the appears on the pews. And I think that's an important point to make, and it's at least in the interest of fairness. And this is a point which has been made by Orthodox Moor in his 2 recent videos on the pews. While I don't think we have the exact same conclusions on the subject, I still would recommend that others interested in the topic check out his videos, as I honestly feel they brought a refreshingly nuanced approach to the subject. I really enjoyed his videos, and he's the person who argues for at least the possibility of multiple languages appearing on the pews, and therefore his position is that the presence of Arabic on the pews does not rule out or exclude the possibility of other languages appearing on the pews. And for all we know, Gates' documentary might likewise entertain claims of other languages also appearing on the pews. We'll see. So I'm going to close this video in a bit, but before I end the video, I want to say that although I personally continue to remain skeptical about claims of language appearing on the pews, it's still worth noting that the likely reason that the case for Arabic on the pews has made it all the way to a PBS documentary is because the case for Arabic is honestly, thus far has been stronger than the respective cases for other languages. Irrespective of what any of our positions might be on the markings on the pews, I still think that if we're honest, we have to concede that Arabic so far, now maybe things can change in the future, but so far, Arabic has had the strongest case, insofar that it's the only language for which at least one known scholar has backed a coherent, historically attested phrase appearing on one of the pews. And whatever the case, I'm honestly looking forward to seeing this documentary, and I look forward to seeing it. And I also, of course, look forward to the comments of others on this video, whether before or after the documentary airs. So I just wanted to make this quick, this brief video on that. On that note, God bless.
So those writings on those pews is a Shemitic language. It's not Arabic, because if it was so, then how come they still haven't translated?
Yeah, if you're not someone who's trained, you can make it seem as though it's Arabic, but it's not actually Arabic. Okay, so we done with all this conversation about Arabic. Okay, thanks. So at this point, I thank all of y'all owe Pastor Kelly an apology.
What?
Not only do I think all of y'all owe Pastor Kelly an apology publicly, the same way you did those videos refuting the pews and it being Arabic, y'all need to issue a public apology, and you need to delete all of your videos because those videos are false.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And we got confirmation as well, as far as of what that there's no Arabic on the pews.
I can definitely or definitively say that it's not Arabic.
Moray Brown with Professor Katz, he gave him definitive answers, made it clear there is no Arabic on the pews. You can't get away from that.